has a, I guess you'd call it a virtual parent group, parent advocacy group. And if you look her up under Inspire Inclusion, you can find it. Now, there are some free resources on her website for parents who are looking to advocate more effectively for the children. But then there's also an option, and I don't get a kickback from her. There's also an option, I think it's $150, and you get access to a whole binder of materials and videos from Julie that can walk you through how do I advocate for a more inclusive education for my child through the IEP process and so on. So that's a good resource. Are you also aware of the Facebook group Inclusive Education for Children with Down Syndrome? Okay, I post on that all the time. I'm always running my mouth on that. That's another great source of kind of, support. So let's talk about advocacy. You probably wish I started with this, but I did want to lay the groundwork for what I'm advocating for. So I'm going to share 7 kind of strategies with you. The first is making sure that you know what the research says. And I'll give you details about each one of these. The second is to presume your child's competence and help other people to presume your child's competence. The third is to develop a written vision for your child that will go in the IEP and that you can read at the beginning of every meeting. Number 4 is recruit allies. And I was talking with a mom outside, and she said, she's gone to lots of these workshops, but the biggest thing she just had this aha is the kind of I can't do it alone. I need to get some other people to work with me because that's just a more powerful way to get things done. Number 5 is don't settle for your child just being there. I actually am in the process of writing a book that's going to come out next year, and it's called Inclusion is More Than Just Being In. It's more than just physically being inside the 4 walls of the classroom. It's membership, participation, and actual learning. 6th strategy is to write an inclusive IEP. And I have a website, just my name, CherylMJorgensen.com. I think it's CherylMJorgensen.com. And there's all sorts of PowerPoint presentations on there, articles, examples of, there's an example of an inclusive elementary IEP, an inclusive high school IEP. And the 7th one is to kind of really share successful inclusion stories and resources with your team. And I put down here kind of as a last resort is to seek legal counsel, but I think that's an option. So, and I guess I did have Julie's website up here. That the URL, the web address is right in your PowerPoint, inspireinclusion.com. If you can ever go to a conference and hear Julie, she's awesome. So, knowing the research. So, usually, when people talk about the research on inclusive education, they talk about the research that shows the good outcomes for students. I also think we need to share the other side of the story, which is there are some negative effects of children being in segregated classrooms or educational programs. Here's what some of the research says. Academic instruction in segregated classrooms or other separate settings is of poorer quality than in the regular class. Children in segregated classrooms or other separate settings have poorer quality IEPs. So what the researchers did, is they looked for, similar kids. One kid with Down syndrome who kind of looks and, their assessment scores look the same as another kid with Down syndrome. One kid in an inclusive program, one kid in segregated. And they looked at their IEPs and compared them to some quality indicators of a good IEP. Kids who are included, better IEPs. Quote, learn communication skills in a group of 7 other kids who have severe disabilities. It's a whole other world to use communication skills out in the real world, right? When children are not included, the opportunities for them to develop social relationships are much fewer. Just being included is not a guarantee of close social relationships, but it's the first requirement. It's necessary but not sufficient. Students learn less in segregated classrooms. That's negative. And I'm going to give you the flip side of what they do learn better in inclusive classrooms. Being separate, being segregated, really goes against this idea that everybody needs to feel a deep sense of belonging in order for them to become their best person. So here's the flip side, which are, what are the benefits of inclusive education? Even when you're talking about the same kind of kid, kids who are inclusive ed, people have higher expectations for them than those same kinds of kids in separate classrooms. Students, the performance of kids on reading and math tests, performance of kids with disabilities on standardized reading and math tests is directly related to the amount of time they spend in general education, even if the instruction is crappy. That's another form of that technical term, oh crap. How does that translate into Russian? Oh crap. Okay. You're awesome. Kids who are included, fewer missed days of school, fewer problem behavior referrals. There's been some research that shows when the child with a disability is in regular class, they can bring some resources along with them, like a paraprofessional, a speech pathologist who might come into the class and do small groups with all the kids, a special ed teacher who might do some small group instruction. So there could actually be an added benefit. I also think there's an added benefit around teaching all kids to understand that the world is full of diverse people. Opportunity to develop social relationships. It promotes the value of diversity for all kids. And you're going to want to write this one down. Regardless of the student's disability label, regardless of the student's functioning level, regardless of the student's economic family background, positive outcomes after high school are also directly statistically correlated with the amount of time kids spend in general education. Kids earn more, they're more likely to live in a less segregated adult living situation. They score better on tests of independence, and they have a wider network of social relationships. This is regardless of the severity of their disability. And I have data and research to show that. It's not my data, it's big studies of thousands of kids. Where is this all research? Sarah, can you ask me to post some research citations? Because I have a whole document. It's called, I don't know what it's called, something about research information for families and educators. And it will list like the name of the researchers who did the article, who did the research. Now, your own Wayne Saylor from the University of Kansas, testified in Congress that said there's even a growing body of research, scientific evidence, saying that integrated service models, which means delivering services in general ed settings for students with disabilities, enhances the educational outcomes for all students. That's a biggie, isn't it? I think it is. Julie Costin has also done some research and published some research on schools they've worked with when it's kind of that if you can figure out how to teach students with disabilities well in a general ed class, there end up being benefits to all the kids. So, any questions about that research?
No, but there is one more benefit that when those children have children with disabilities, they're going to be a lot more ready for their own children to make it. I agree. I wish that, I feel like there were never any students with disabilities that I knew of.
Right.
Going through schools, and I so wish that I would have been exposed to that. And
that's right.
I feel like it would have been a really positive thing. And then having a child with Down syndrome would have been like this. Oh
right.
My gosh, I don't even know anybody with
That's
Down
right.
syndrome.
And not only are people with disabilities going to become future employees and employers, but all those typical kids are going to become future neighbors, future employers, and it just matters. And the number one way that people with disabilities get their jobs when they get out of school is through some personal connection, whether it's their own personal connection or their family's personal connection. So the more connections you can have with more people, the better.
So
yes.
Basically, I'm looking at this and thinking, so basically you can't teach compassion outside of experiencing it.
That's right. You can't. So in my old days, which is like 30 years ago, people used to have what was called Disability Awareness Day. And what they would do with kids, and of course there weren't kids with disabilities in these groups, is they would have able-bodied kids sit in a wheelchair all day long. Or they would have able-bodied kids put on like glasses and smear them with Vaseline to get the experience of being visually impaired. And it was called like a disability simulation. So I was talking with some people the other day, and the person said to me, so would that be like asking a straight person to pretend they're gay for a day to understand what it's like being gay? Or for you to smear your face with black makeup and you pretend you're black for a day? No. You get to know what the experience of disability is by knowing someone who has a disability, right? Okay. Second strategy is to, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is presume your child's competence. So I wrote a paper like this that I think you have in your packet called the least dangerous assumption of presuming competence. It's like the little buff-colored one, right? So let me just walk you through this idea. I think, and some other researchers have written about this, that it's the least dangerous assumption we can make to presume that students are able to learn that general ed curriculum if and when they're provided with high quality instruction and support with fidelity. Let me tell you what fidelity means. So if somebody's trying to teach a kid to read and they're not using an effective reading curriculum, and you test that child and the student scores really low, you don't say, oh, that kid will never learn to read. because the teacher wasn't using the right strategies. And the same extends to children with disabilities and how we teach and support them. If your child has a communication device, people need to be using that communication device with fidelity, which means according to the best way you use it. If your child has sensory needs and he or she has a sensory break schedule, and if people aren't using that well, and then they go, oh, well, he's starting to flop at 2 o'clock. It's not that your child has the problem, it's they weren't doing the strategy accurately and consistently. So that's what I mean by fidelity. And let me tell you what least dangerous assumption means that, sorry, rewind. So there's 5 reasons why, for me, I think it's the least dangerous or least harmful assumption I can make about any child who I meet. And the first reason is, and this is just blah, 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 but it's because our expectations matter. If we have high expectations for kids compared to having low expectations, it's quite amazing that kids will learn more if you have higher expectations of them. Is that a duh? Is it kind of obvious?
I think it is for
Typical kid.
the teachers.
Oh,
Not for us.
okay.
Like, so I feel like we go in there and we have this high expectation.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of them are shocked that our expectations are so high.
that's correct.
So I find that on the other side of the table where
Hmm.
this is where we want them to be. But then they're like, well, yeah.
Good clarification. The second reason why I always presume competence, even if I've got, the student with the most complex support needs, the student who can't speak, the student who can move only an eyelash, the student who, list whatever challenges you want, is that a lot of these assessments that are used on people with disabilities kind of just point out what they can't do or what they have trouble with, rather than telling us what could they do if they had really good instruction and supports. So I've seen some really great reports by psychologists that they report testing, but then they also say, here's what I've learned about this child that will help us teach him better. I've also seen reports from psychologists or other people who test kids that all you're reading is can't, don't, won't. Not helpful. Not helpful. I also think that a really important reason to presume competence is because over the past 30, 40 years, there's just a growing body of research showing that more people are able to do more than we ever thought they could when they get support and when they have a means to instruction. One more comment and then I'll call on you. My sister-in-law, Becky, was born with Down syndrome in 1950. And she was of that generation that I showed first today. She didn't go to school. She didn't go to school. My mother-in-law had to start a church basement program for little children with Down syndrome. But they didn't know kids could learn to read back then. We're finding out kids can just do more than we ever thought. Yes.
I hear you talk about this. It reminds me of that video of Helen Keller, where the lady figured out how to hold her hand on certain parts of her. And I mean, look how much Helen Keller produced for the world when people thought she couldn't hear, see.
Exactly. Helen Keller is sort of a famous example. Do you know of somebody who, or when she was little and she was blind and deaf, some people thought she could never learn anything, and then she came across a teacher who was able to unlock her competence. Yeah. Do you know there are some people that still think Helen Keller was, as we say in New England, and I'm not going to actually say it, she was wicked, the R word. I mean, she was just, some people think it was all like a circus trick and that Anne Sullivan, her teacher, was speaking for Helen Keller. Because when people look different and communicate differently, many people just have an automatic prejudice that kicks in that says she couldn't possibly be smart. I think this really affects kids with Down syndrome just terribly. It affects kids with autism terribly. Anybody who can't speak to communicate is assumed to have an intellectual disability. Yeah, head nodding. Saying a kid is low functioning blames the child for the fact that you haven't learned how to teach him yet. Please stop. I need a volunteer. Anybody want to volunteer to do a little? Mm-hmm. That's your laser pointer. So Janelle is in my 10th grade history class, pretend. And we're studying the Civil War. And I'm asking all the kids what they remember about their reading. So Janelle, use your communication board. Remind me who was in the debate with Abraham Lincoln. Just go ahead and point on your device. She's, what is it called now? Oppositional defiant. Goodbye. Yeah, okay. She's a runner. Yeah? This is too hard for her. She's saying, I can't learn this. I need to get out of the classroom. Try one more time, Janelle. Help. Okay. Based on Janelle's answer to my question about who was in the debates with Abraham Lincoln, what do I assume she knows about the Civil War? That's what I should assume, because I haven't given her a way to communicate about it, right? There is this notion in the field that some people in the field of communication disorders still abide by, which is until the kids can demonstrate all this kind of communication with 100% reliability, we can't give them any more to communicate about. That is absolutely wrong. We need to give all kids at whatever age they are a way to communicate about the same things that other kids their age are communicating about, and then teach them to use their communication devices. Last two reasons why I think presuming competence makes sense. Number one, to presume incompetence, meaning to sort of just say, I just think this kid will never learn A, B, and C, could really be harmful if that assumption is wrong. And the flip side, even if we're wrong about students' capacities to learn gen ed curriculum, the consequences of being wrong about that are not as dangerous as the alternative. So for me, that's why I think presuming competence makes sense. You could share that article with a teacher. You could call a meeting to come to discuss it. I actually suggested to a group of teachers the day before yesterday that they host like an evening meeting and they work with the PTA to do it, to bring in some adults with disabilities who can speak about their schooling experience, their inclusive schooling experiences, and then can also show what they're doing now as adults. Because I think most people don't know. Just like you said, most people haven't really developed a close relationship with a person with a disability and seen what their lives can be like. So if teachers think the only option for your kids are sheltered workshops, group homes, and menial jobs, then they are going to think that life skills is the only way to go and that academics have nothing to do with your child's future. So the third strategy for you is to develop an inclusive vision. And I'm grateful to my friend Barb McKenzie for sharing her daughter Erin's story. So Erin was the keynote speaker at her high school graduation. It's hard to understand. I'm just going to let you see a little clip of it. Thank you. And Barb, Erin's mom, she says this herself. She says, she says, sometimes I get tired of only hearing stories about those superstars with Down syndrome. She says Erin was just like a regular kid with Down syndrome. She wasn't a superstar. She wasn't the best this, that, or the other thing. She was fully included all through high school. And what Barb did, probably when Erin was about 3, is she went to one of these partners in policy making leadership seminars. And she wrote a vision for Erin about what she wanted her life to be. And she revised it a couple of times as Erin got older. So Erin will have a life in the community that values diversity and accentuates strengths, and she'll share her gifts and talents with that community. She'll have reciprocal relationships, and she'll communicate and advocate for herself. She'll have the same opportunities to learn and participate in typical classroom, extracurricular, and community activities when they would typically happen. Erin will graduate from high school in 2004 and will have continued post-secondary options and a career. And what Erin did is Erin wrote her own vision statement that also went on the IEP. Do you have a parent's vision or a parent's concern section? These things went on Erin's IEP. So she sort of tells a little bit about herself, what she wants to be like. She wants to, work in a theater, go into drama. She wants to get, I guess it was a removable tattoo, a washable tattoo. And here, I talk with friends in English. We all got put tattoos on Inquire. My lab group measured outside. I washed a big truck at the drama club car wash. Tiffany helped me with sign language after school. I see her at the football games and in Global 1, which is a history class. So you see that Erin's inclusion is not only about academics, it's because that's where she's made social relationships. Again, just sort of as each year went along, Erin would kind of revise this vision to be specific for her next year in school. Barb, Erin's mom, says that not only does she know that Erin needs to make close social relationship, but Barb needed to maybe go even a little bit beyond her shy personality and widen her circle of relationships, because she knew she needed support as she was advocating for Erin. And the more people in her community that knew Erin, knew Barb, could come to like planning meetings in Barb's home to think about how to solve problems for Erin, the more that she would not feel alone. So here are a couple more vision statements, and then I'm going to ask you all to write one for your kids. My friend Beth Dixon wrote, "The most important thing for us is for Andrew to have friends, not special buddies. He loves his friends, and when he's with them, he thrives. He communicates more, learns more, and feels a real sense of belonging. Academics are important too, but without friends, Andrew's life will be filled with loneliness. We want Andrew to be involved in all the same classes and extracurricular activities that other 7th graders are." James has great strengths. We, as parents, we have some practical tools and suggestions that we think will work, and we hope that you guys will really want to partner with us and maybe use some of our ideas. We hope everybody has the right attitude and that James' team is fearless, creative, acknowledges his challenges, and not be afraid, blah, blah, blah. We'd like to see Belinda communicate effectively, to be able to express her thoughts and knowledge. We want social interactions and to be in the general class all day, every day. This is a long one about Caitlin. The sort of big messages in this vision statement. are keeping expectations high. We want her exposed to all the content areas in high school and to learn reading and writing. We want her to live as independently as possible. She wants to go to college. She also wants to work with animals. We hope you will join us in supporting our daughter's hope and dreams to help her achieve them. So, I know some of you came with friends or came with partners. So go ahead and either work alone. If you want to work with somebody else to write a vision statement, please do. Why don't you take about 10 minutes?